So I really don't like doing this, but I did it, and there's an apology that's going to come with it. So I took down the day of eating video, and I am sorry that I did it in the first place, and I didn't realize the harm that it could cause. And above all, one of the most important things to me is to never do anything that harms people. I would never want to give people bad training advice or something. I can give you guys stories of times where I had bad coaches that actually injured me. It's a weird thing. I never got injured training on my own or writing my own programming, but I certainly had coaches who pushed me and others entirely too far. And at one point in time, there was a coach who injured literally 100% of our team because he was just excessive. He did not seem to understand that maybe don't injure your athletes, and it was a weird thing. And sure enough, on a long enough timeline, he eventually injured every single person on the team because he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. That being said, I did this video, Day of Eating, and I did it because one, this is really popular on YouTube. And I was like, why is this so popular? Because I don't watch those videos. I don't watch people's videos of what they eat. But I was aware that this is very, very popular. In fact, there's multiple articles about how this is such a popular category. And so I thought, well, fuck it, I'll do one. And when I did it with the intent that I was going to give people something simple that they could just take and apply to themselves. Choose some foods that you digest well, and then, make protein. Obviously, it's the most important thing. Protein, like, it literally means primary, actually. You guys could look it up. The etymology of the word means primary. So make sure you're getting your protein. For me, I chose yogurt and meat, basically. And, I split my meals up, and then from there, you add in fats or you add in carbs, whatever you need. Of course, there's a good bit of fat that comes with the meat that I buy. I buy the cheapest stuff that they have. I look for like the 70-30 at Super One because it's the cheapest. That's my reason for it. Believe me, I'd much rather be eating prime rib and, filet mignon. But that's expensive, so I buy the cheap stuff because I eat a lot of food. And so if you're going to eat a lot of food, you have to buy the cheap stuff. Anyways, a lot of people messaged me about that video. I got tons of messages from people who follow me on IG. And someone informed me, and I want to say thank you to that person. I'm not going to name you or anything. I didn't ask your permission ahead of time. They informed me that apparently the reason why that category is so popular is because people with eating disorders are obsessed with what other people eat, and therefore they watch those videos. And I was like, huh, that's weird. And I looked it up, and sure enough, there's a bunch of articles discussing the fact that apparently that category of video, what I eat in a day, is really popular because it just attracts people with eating disorders. And so that's what's going on there. This doesn't entirely surprise me. I did a video on foot strengthening exercises, and it was one of my most popular videos. Not because people were watching it for foot strengthening. It turns out that a lot of people with a foot fetish were watching my video. And so I got a bunch of comments from people, can you send me pictures of your feet? And I was like, what? There's a whole video of me talking about foot exercises. Why do you want pictures of my feet? And yeah. So I put out a video talking about how to strengthen your foot so you don't get stress fractures in your feet or, in your tibias, shin splints, etc. And instead, it attracted a bunch of people with a foot fetish. Thanks for the views and the likes, but that was not my intention. Similarly, with this whole situation of talking about what I eat in a day, I really was just trying to give people almost like a template by which they could put their own diet together. I don't care what you eat. Have tofu for breakfast, have eggs for breakfast. It doesn't matter to me. I just try to make things simple. I encourage people to make their diet as simple as possible because if it's simple, it's easier for you to adhere to it. It's easier for you to be consistent. I really think it's very important that people simplify things because simplicity is sustainable. If you have to be super complex and weigh and measure every last little thing, that's no longer simple. That that tends to burn people out, and then people fall off the wagon and they can't stick to it because it's too much effort level. It's kind of like if you put a bowl of fruit on the counter, you're more likely to eat it because it's just sitting right there in front of you. So when you walk past, you grab the apple out of the fruit bowl rather than going and digging through your cabinets for something else. Similarly, if you put chips out or you put candy out, people will just grab a handful of M&Ms as they walk past. There's actually studies on this. I mean, if you put a bowl of M&Ms on the counter, people will help themselves. If you put a bowl of fruit on the counter, people will help themselves. People tend to grab whatever's right in front of them. It's the effort level. It's the prompting, right? There's a visual cue. So anyways, I took the video down because I certainly don't want to do anything that would contribute to someone's eating disorder. I wouldn't want to give people I wouldn't want to speak incorrectly and for my words to somehow exacerbate someone's issues. I don't know how to say that in a more PC way, but essentially what I'm trying to express to you is that I felt very uncomfortable when I learned of that. And I thought to myself, geez, I don't want this video to make things worse for anyone. So I took it down. What I will say around this is that I think that eating disorders are far more common than people realize because so many of them are what you might consider subclinical. And I will say for myself that I am actually surprised that I don't have an eating disorder, given some of the things that I have done in the past and some of the coaches that I worked with. I had a very well-known now, he was nobody whenever I worked for them, but I had a very well-known coach who handled my nutrition for a while along with my training, and he was like really strict about like, these are bad foods, don't eat this, gluten is evil, and you know, even things like rice, white rice, it's a grain, you can't have it, it's bad for you, you know, and that was not a good situation. Needless to say, I didn't work with him for very long, actually, because he kept changing my diet and my performance kept getting worse. The more he tweaked, the worse things got, the worse I felt. And so, thankfully, I didn't work with him for very long. But he certainly had an influence on me for a while there because I really thought he knew what he was talking about, and turns out he didn't. But, you know, regardless, the point is that, like, now I look back at that with what I know now, and I recognize that's like orthorexia at some point. Like, we were obsessing about the difference of eating potatoes versus sweet potatoes or yams, or like, potatoes are bad. You can't have those. But you can have all the kale you want. Forget the oxalates. Potatoes are bad because of oxalates, but kale and spinach, those were totally fine. The logic doesn't add up. Like I said, there was a lot of orthorexia in there. He was very insistent on eating grass-fed beef too. Like, you can't eat the grain-fed stuff. It's bad for you. It's like eating poison. And that's the kind of stuff that he was telling me. And I look back at that and I'm like, wow, that was terrible advice. I don't ever want to do that. That's why I don't do nutrition. I talk about nutrition, right? But I refuse to coach people on nutrition because I think that the psychological side of it is way more important than what people are actually eating. And I feel like when you write people meal plans or templates or whatever, I don't even care if you're assigning macros, I feel like you're in some dangerous territory there. A lot of people develop an eating disorder because they tried to lose weight. So they didn't have an eating disorder beforehand, and then they start tweaking their diet and start paying attention to their diet, and then they actually develop an eating disorder because of that. You'll hear it from people who do bodybuilding and physique and, you know, bikini, etc. All these competitors, they develop an eating disorder from the dieting. They didn't have any issues before it. So that's why I try not to touch it in terms of actually like giving anything prescriptive. Though I do talk about nutrition in general terms. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just talking about it in general terms. I think that I try to focus on nutrition for the purpose of health and performance rather than dieting. So all that being said, basically this video is a long explanation of why I took it down, and also it's an apology. I'm apologizing to anyone who may have watched it, and I don't know if it hit you the wrong way or exacerbated some of the feelings and emotions that you deal with. I hope not. I would feel terrible if it did. And I was unaware of the fact that the reason why that category was popular was because people with eating disorders apparently are obsessed with what other people eat, and so they watch those videos and they concern themselves about, like, hey, tell me what you eat, tell me what your macros are, tell me all this stuff like that. I didn't know that. I actually did not know that until I started reading, and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a symptom of an eating disorder, or that putting out that kind of information might actually make someone's eating disorder worse. So I am sorry. I am genuinely apologizing. And in the future, I will make a point to be more judicious, cautious about discussing topics like that, especially things that are trending. And that's why I don't do the videos where people talk about how much they hate this person or that person, like so-and-so is a fake, this person's a fake natty, whatever. I don't think that that's good. I don't think anything positive comes out of calling out people and making accusations. Even from a legal standpoint, you probably shouldn't do things like that. If you accuse someone of being on steroids, they had better fail a drug test before you accuse them, because otherwise you're making a false accusation there. That's slander. It's libel if you write it, and I don't think that that's... Forget it. Even if it wasn't a legal issue, I still think it's wrong. I don't think you should make accusations of people, especially whenever you don't know. So you certainly can say that something's suspicious. You can point out that, hey, this guy's FMI is 32. We know like the cutoff is like 25-ish. So when you see a guy walking around at 30, 32, 34, it's suspicious. But I wouldn't go so far as to make an accusation of someone unless you really had some very strong evidence, like them failing a drug test. So that's about it. I know that that's a tangent there, but I'm kind of just pointing out that there's a lot of stuff that's popular on YouTube that maybe shouldn't be so popular, and that's why I took it down. So I'm sorry. If you guys have questions about it, go ahead and comment below. But yeah, that's why I did it. That's why I took it down. And in the future, if I discuss things like what I eat or my diet or my nutrition, I will try to make it more broad and talk about it in more of a situation of discussing like why certain foods are things that you might want to include because of the nutrient value in them. And that's what I'll try to stick to in the future. So sorry for any trouble that may have caused.